I'd like to start. Thanks very much, Dale. So we are live for the recording now. One of the first things I'd like to do, even before introductions, is start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the lands on which Memorial University's campuses are situated are in the traditional territories of diverse Indigenous groups, and we acknowledge, with respect, the diverse histories and cultures of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit of the province. So good morning, everyone. I'm for those who don't know me, I'm Jeff Williams with Faculty Relations, and I'll be participating in the session this morning. I'd also, perhaps through introduction, I know Sarah Anthony is on from Faculty Relations as well. Sarah, maybe you could introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Sarah Anthony.
I note as well there are a couple of items to note. If given the large number of folks we have on, if people could keep their mics muted, so they want to raise a question. Format we found that's worked well with respect to the sessions is if you wish to put your question in the chat, that's helpful. We can make sure we can capture it as well. There will be an opportunity. And I'd like to provide some introductions. Now I know Ash is on from MUNFA, Josh and others. Ash, do you want to start with some introductions?
I just wanted to point one thing, because if there is too many videos on, like on campus, the streaming is like internet bandwidth sometimes gets really tricky. So like maybe like who is presenting and who is want to talk on something, only those two people can have their cameras on. So that's that. You want me to start the introduction? Josh is here also. He's our president.
Yeah, whoever wants to start from MUNFA's perspective, Ash.
Yeah, I'll make Josh. You can start first. You're the president.
Morning, folks. Those who don't know me, I'm Josh Leposki. I'm a professor in geography. I'm also current MUNFA president. Thanks.
I can go next. This is Ash Hussain. I was president last year. This year, I'm the vice president and president-elect. I'm with MUNFA, and I'm also a professor of finance at Faculty Business.
Thank you, Ash. I note Amy is on.
Hi, folks. Amy Wadden. I'm the Labor Relations Officer with MUNFA.
Thanks, Amy. I note as well, I'm sure I've seen Dale there.
Hi, I'm Dale Humphreys. I'm a Labor Relations Coordinator down here at MUNFA.
Thanks, Dale. And not to miss anyone, but I don't see all the Todds. I wonder if there are any other, I know Erica is there as well. Erica?
Hi, just turned my video on. Yes, Erica, I'm in chemistry, and I'm co-chair of the Academic Freedom and Grievance Committee with MUNFA.
Thank you, Erica. Are there any other MUNFA committee members wish to introduce themselves to the group for the presentation? Okay. Well, in terms of the format this morning, we've got a slide presentation we are going to go through. It's a joint presentation. So from perspective of moving forward, I'll take the lead on the slides, and Amy and others will certainly speak up and provide responses and address your questions as they arise as well. So looking forward to a good session this morning. Bit of an outline of our presentation. So we want to talk a bit about the P&T committee composition. So with respect to who can serve, who can't serve, many issues that might arise where you may be wondering, well, gee, should I serve or do I have to step off the committee, that kind of thing. We're going to provide a summary of promotion and tenure processes. There have been some changes in the to the most recent round, to the most recent collective agreement through bargaining to the promotion tenure processes, which are important to go through. Going to talk about some common trouble areas as well. That we need to provide a bit of advice on, and we'll look at we'll also talk about some of the functions of the administrative head in the process as well. So that's sort of the makeup of the presentation today. So let's get started. With respect to the first order of business, the committee composition. So collective agreement provides some direction and guidance to those who can and can't serve. And with respect to when questions arise with respect to a documented, so where a candidate under consideration presents a documented record of personal conflict with a faculty member who's otherwise eligible to serve on the committee, and the head determines that the documented personal conflict exists, and that creates a reasonable apprehension of bias, then the faculty member should recuse him or herself from serving on the committee for that candidate. So this clause, what it essentially means is, if there is two key points here. One, if there's a documented record of personal conflict. So if that's presented to the head, a documented record of personal conflict, and the head secondly needs to make a determination that that indeed creates a reasonable apprehension of bias, then the committee member would recuse themselves for the consideration of that particular candidate only. So they would not step away from the committee, but only for that particular candidate. So they'd be able to still hear the remainder of the files to be reviewed. This one we sometimes get questions on in terms of, a documented record. So a documented record here is meant to mean and envision something more than while you may have had disagreements, say, with a colleague, or you may have had differences of opinion. This clause is really meant where there's a document, so there's some documentation of a personal conflict, and that documentation can take many forms. But if there is a record of documented conflict, then I think that should be raised, and then it's ultimately up to the head to make that assessment based on what's presented, whether there's a reasonable apprehension of bias. Another area where somebody may not be able to serve on the committee for a particular candidate is with respect to where a faculty member who is a member of the committee has within the past 6 years been an academic supervisor of a candidate under consideration. So that's one too where you'd have to recuse yourself from serving on the committee for that particular candidate, and that's found under clause 705 of the collective agreement. Collective agreement as well outlines certain circumstances under which people are ineligible to serve on the committee. So one, if you're applying for promotion or tenure, you can't serve on the committee. If you're being considered for an extension of tenure track appointment, you're ineligible to serve. As well, if you hold a term appointment of less than 2 years. And lastly, if you're in a conflict of interest circumstance with a candidate, you can still serve once again, but you'd have to recuse yourself from that serving for that particular candidate. With respect to the conflict of interest, if you are looking to have or trying to get a better understanding what that might encompass, have a look at clause 138 of the collective agreement, because 138 outlines some general parameters with respect to a conflict of interest situation. So if for some reason you feel you cannot provide non-biased review of a candidate's file, and it may be related to a conflict of interest, then that will be the clause you'd have a look at, and you'd certainly have that discussion with your head about potentially recusing yourself for that particular file. Amy?
Quickly.
Yeah.
So we sometimes get questions, if I've co-authored, if I've collaborated, those types of questions, or, does that mean I'm in conflict of interest with someone who is whose file is going to be reviewed? My understanding is no. And in fact, I think the university's policy was changed a number of years back to allow collaborators to not necessarily have to recuse themselves from sitting on committees, especially, and that's really important for academic units where there might be a lot of kind of collaborative work, smaller units, those types of things. So we often get those questions, but no, if you collaborate, if you co-author with an ASN, that doesn't mean that you can't serve on the P&T committee for that individual's file.
Thanks, Amy. That's helpful for folks to have an understanding of. You'll note here, though, you can serve on the committee if you're up for a non-decision year review. You are eligible to serve on the committee, and the collective agreement also provides that there can be one untenured individual as well serve on the committee. Okay, so that's sort of the opening, a bit about the committee eligibility, who can, who can't serve, and some parameters under which you may wish to recuse yourself or be obligated to do so. Next, we're going to have a look at the tenure track process, Article 10 under the collective agreement. And the first couple of slides just outline the tenure cycle So with respect to assistant professor, you'll note there's a 6-year review, 6-year cycle here. Year 1, you'll note there's no review. Every other year there is a review with a mandatory review, with the exception of year 4. So year 4 essentially the candidate has an option to decline a year 4 review. If you exercise that option, then that you can have that noted in the assessment file, and it should be noted in the assessment file that indeed you did decline a non-decision year 4 review. Other than that, each of the reviews is mandatory. Oh, sorry. With respect to the associate professor, the only difference here, it's a shortened review cycle. So year 1, no review, year 2, non-decision, and then ultimately year 3, your tenure decision. Couple of things to be mindful of with respect to the tenure cycle. So one is that we have the parties entered into an MOU, which was seems like forever ago now, but it was back in September of 2020, and that MOU provided that any ASM in a tenure any current ASM in a tenure track appointment may request deferral of any upcoming review for up to 2 years. And the other part of that MOU, which was relevant and I think important, is that any salary increase associated with the granting of tenure shall be retroactive to the date tenure would have normally been granted. So that was included so that there be no financial penalty, if you will, or no negative impact on a candidate who exercised their right under this particular MOU to defer the review, because as we know, COVID had a significant impact on individuals. So that's an MOU that is in effect. I think it's one to be at least aware of. Next slide talks about some of the changes that, and I think these are rather substantive changes with respect to Article 10 and the tenure process. So outlined, which has not changed, is normal tenure decision, 6th year for the assistant, 3rd year for an associate. What is new is that clause 1008, at the request of a candidate, an associate's tenure review can occur in the 4th year. So this requires, if indeed someone want to exercise this particular option, basically the faculty member would have to consult with their head and make this request no later than September 15th of their 2nd year. So this was a new clause placed in the collective agreement. And as I say, it does require a consultation with the head. And if you're going to elect to do this, you must do so by September the 15th of your 2nd year. Candidates can apply for tenure early. That will be 5th year for an assistant or 2nd year for an associate. One option which has been in the collective agreement for some time now is that time spent in term appointments may be credited towards your tenure cycle. That's up to a maximum of 3 years that can be credited. And the candidate must indicate this prior to their first review, the amount of the number of years that they want credited. So that does say be aware of the new clause 1008 about the associate being able to request a review in their 4th year. Some of the other changes, though, that are significant, which tie in with that, is with respect to clauses 1023 and clauses 1024. So you'll note when you read through the agreement, those who would have been familiar with the prior collective agreement and made reference that candidates who sought or submitted an application for early tenure had to be successful based on superior performance, criteria of superior performance. Well, that has been eliminated from the collective agreement. So now tenure is based now upon satisfying the tenure criteria in clause 10.30. And the other significant part of this is that if tenure is denied, as in that last bullet, the candidate's tenure track appointment is not extended and they are offered a further 1-year terminal appointment. So what this means is that there is one application for tenure. So that can occur early or can occur during part of the normal tenure, what would be a normal tenure cycle. But it's a substantive change under the previous agreement. If you applied for early tenure and were denied, it was not fatal. You still had an opportunity to apply for tenure in your normal cycle. Change here is, though, that if you're unsuccessful for early tenure, then indeed you are going to be offered a 1-year term of appointment. Ash, do I see your hand up there?
Yes, I would like to mention one point here. Like MUNFA has sent an IB to our members, but as you see, like we don't expect everybody to read the IB. And between your 2 sessions, you probably figured out not everybody who is participating in PNT is showing up for the Zoom meetings, or will watch the videos in MUNFA website or Faculty Relation website. So like it would be prudent, because this is it's a double-edged new addition, like because it's a fatal thing. So if you go early, you don't need the superior anymore, but if you don't get it, it's a fatal thing. So we anticipate that people who serve in PNT will read the collective agreement and so on and so forth, but oftentimes, like I have served enough that I know it doesn't happen. So maybe from your end, at least the heads should be notified, or at least send it to the deans to forward it to the heads. So every head meets with the PNT committee, I assume, like at least in our faculty, we have a meeting with our dean next week. So basically the head should be notified that they should reinforce this point. Number 1, superior is not needed. Number 2, it's a fatal thing. So because everybody is human, even though it should be objective, sometimes subjectivity gets in. So when people know it's fatal, like sometimes that it's important to know that. So I know there are clauses that people are supposed to read that when there's in PNT, but trust me, it doesn't happen. So I would suggest that we try it from our end. We send an IB to let the membership know about this new clause, the revision of the clause, superior route and fatal thing. But I urge faculty relations to do from their part also, contact the heads and the deans, because this is brand new and not many people are aware of that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ash. Certainly, you've highlighted as quite appropriately the what we believe to be a substantive change in the collective agreement with respect to the tenure submission process, particularly if you're considering an early submission. So, thanks very much, and we'll see what we can do to reinforce that message as well with the deans and the heads. Thanks. By now, I'd figure out not to mute myself on a regular basis, but in any event, carrying on with Article 10, next point I want to talk about was the external letters of appraisal for tenure. These are an essential part of the PNT process. 3 to 5 letters of reference listed by Dean. Those providing the letters of appraisal are to be external to the university. At least 2 of those referees must hold the rank of associate or professor at a recognized university and have a national international reputation. And they shall not currently be collaborating with candidate nor have collaborated in the past 5 years. So a little bit different than what Amy just highlighted in terms of being able to be on a PNT committee, but with respect to letters of appraisal. And we are going to touch a bit and give you some thoughts in terms of collaborating, because this one always generates some discussion, and there are regular questions that are posed on that particular topic. So we will move into, sort of trying to provide some examples here of what will be considered collaboration. Co-authoring scholarly works, articles, books, papers, presentations, holding joint research grants, co-investigators, submitting joint grant proposals, student-supervisor relationships, joint course curriculum development. Collaboration must be in a 5-year period. And the other point to note here, there are many gray areas when trying to determine whether a relationship constitutes collaboration. Such as those gray areas that we found as well over the past years: contributions to an ed-to-book or scholarly journal, team teaching. In terms of trying to work your way through this issue of collaboration, I think in a lot of cases it will be helpful to have a discussion with your head in terms of trying to come to a conclusion, understanding, a joint understanding if possible, in terms of whether this referee is appropriate, given if there has been some collaboration, or trying to make that determination. reach out to MUNFA as a source as well in trying to come to that determination. Because ultimately, when that list of referees are finalized, that's the list that will be used for the assessment of the file. So I think it's very important with collaboration here to have a good understanding up front as to what constitutes or what does not constitute collaboration in terms of being able to move forward. And oftentimes these issues are not as clear as one would think. With respect to the letters of appraisal, a couple of key points here is that the administrative heads must consult with candidates on the appropriateness of the names of the referees. That's explicitly stated in the collective agreement. There's got to be consultation with respect to the letters. Some new language we want to highlight for you under the collective agreement, clause 1011. Upon the request of the faculty member, potential referees may include Indigenous elders and or traditional knowledge carriers, keepers, who shall be deemed commensurate with all of the referees. At least one letter of reference from this particular group must be chosen. So here we made a change to the collective agreement, an amendment to the collective agreement, based on certainly wanting to recognize the different appropriate referees can be used. We wanted to as well enshrine that the referees who include Indigenous elders, traditional knowledge keepers, carriers, these referees will be deemed commensurate with all other referees. Oftentimes, it's not assured that referees from this particular grouping would hold what we traditionally see as professor or associate professor rankings at universities, but we did want to make sure this option was open and available and endorsed for candidates. And the other point of this being, I'll say last sentence in there, is that when referees are put forward, at least one letter of reference from this particular grouping must be chosen. So that's something to have a look for under the new collective agreement. Criteria for tenure, that hasn't it's changed slightly. What you see here on the slide, the criteria is under 10.30. That particular language was in the previous collective agreement. We have as well, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a later slide, we have included as well reference to Indigenous knowledge as one of the other factors here, one of the other points to consider when looking at the criteria for tenure. Well, what we're looking at here, what is it that the committee is assessing? So as a role of a P&T committee, what is it you're being required to consider and look at here? Well, we've been required to consider the documented effectiveness and scholarly competence as a teacher, demonstrated record since the date of appointment of research scholarship. List of factors here is considered in the expanded 10.30B, and as well the new language I just mentioned with respect to Indigenous knowledges, and the demonstrated record of academic service. So that's what the committee is being asked and required to assess. We'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about the file, the documentation. Your assessment should be based on and has to be based on the material that's in the file. And that's why it's so important. We've got a couple of slides dedicated later. We'll talk about the importance of candidates having their file, a very thorough file, a very organized file, and it ultimately being the responsibility of the candidate to have their file in order. But there's some assistance and guidance that can be provided when the faculty member and the candidate's putting that together. Some other changes in Article 10 that are certainly worthwhile to note. 10.09B, if performance of a candidate's unsatisfactory in third-year review, the candidate may be offered a further one-year terminal appointment. So that latter part is new. Clause 10.26. So when you have a look at clause 10.26, it's a fairly lengthy paragraph. It originated from a memorandum of understanding that the parties have put in place during the life of the collective agreement. And it's with respect to department head dean consultation, departmentalized faculties. And it outlines the process by which, if the dean is going to consult with departmental heads about tenure files, it outlines a process, and it outlines some parameters around that. So one of those parameters is that consultation may only occur after the head has submitted their own written recommendations. The purpose is clearly outlined to ensure consistent application of tenure criteria across the faculty. And it's a consultative process and solely advisory to the dean. So it clarifies this is not certainly a voting process, a majority kind of decision making. It's a consultative process. As I say, when you have a look through 10.26, we think it's relatively straightforward. But if there are any questions, please reach out to MUNFA or ourselves, and we'll be happy to clarify that. But that actually stems from memorandum of understanding. I note before we move on to the discussion on the promotion section of the collective agreement process, any questions, Amy, that have arisen in the chat, or anything that we've missed or we need to address?
I don't see anything, unless I'm missing something.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. We'll continue, and there'll be an opportunity as we go through. If folks think of something, we can certainly double back and address it. So Article 11 deals with the procedures and criteria for promotion. As well, there's been some changes there as well. With respect to promotion to the rank of professor, you'll note Article Clause 1118C. Requires a candidate to identify either superior research or superior teaching. So that is something that the candidate must do. They must identify which criteria that they're going forward on. Collective agreement also outlines that early promotion can only be made once for each rank. And early applications will be judged on the merits, i.e. the criteria that's criteria of promotion is outlined in the collective agreement. Early promotion. So with respect to early promotion, if a candidate achieves early promotion prior to the granting of tenure, tenure review occurs in the year that it would have occurred had the early promotion not been granted. So essentially there's no impact. So if you apply for early promotion, then it has no real impact on your tenure application. If applying for a promotion prior to the granting of tenure, promotion application should be considered separately from any review scheduled to occur as part of the tenure review process. Amy?
There's a question in the chat from Julie Purchase. Is there a limitation on how many promotions will be approved in a department? So for example, if chemistry has 10 faculty applying for tenure, can all 10 be approved? My understanding is absolutely yes. Yeah, there's no limit on how many people can get tenure and promotion at any time or in any year.
No limit. You're quite right. With respect to the criteria of promotion, clause 1114. So with 1114, candidates provide evidence of a cumulative record of academic performance appropriate to the rank being sought, demonstrated professional growth, etc. We've got an asterisk in that second bullet, new language in clause 1114 versus indigenous knowledges. So that I was mentioning too, we had added that same language to the tenure, Article 10. So as well, it's been added here. So another factor for the for consideration of the committee. Last bullet, the last point there, in addition, faculty members' teaching load, access to research facilities, specified time, hire, other available infrastructure shall be considered. It's important, and perhaps I didn't touch on it when I went through the criteria for tenure. I think it is important to note that if indeed a candidate's teaching load has been a factor in their progression, or such things as the access to research facilities. I don't know, maybe perhaps it's being they were later being established than were initially thought. Those are things that should be documented and placed in the file for consideration of the committee. Perhaps didn't mention that previously, but that clause is important from that perspective, that indeed, if there are factors that have impacted on someone's progression, then I think that should be documented in the file for the committee's consideration. As well, external letters of appraisal for promotion, similar to tenure. A couple of things to note here. It's they're required for promotion to associate in full. 3 of 5 as well, external. Bullet number 4, though, at least 2 referees must hold the rank of professor. I think when we had the discussion with respect to tenure and the referees' letters, 2 of those referees had to hold the rank of either associate or professor. Well, specific with promotion, that at least 2 must hold the rank of professor. And as well, the national, international, and the rest is the same with respect to shall not have collaborated in the past 5 years. With respect to librarians, which are found the promotion language, Articles 15, 16, 17, tenure cycle is based on the anniversary date of the librarian. A librarian can be invited to apply for tenure. And librarians holding term appointments are not eligible to serve on P&T committees. So the tenure, the promotion cycle for librarians is a bit different based on, say, the anniversary date. So if there are specific questions on that, please reach out to either MUNFA or ourselves. We're happy to walk you through and have a look at that as well. Next section of our presentation, we talk about words of wisdom, common problem areas, and we find this helpful to minimize the number of issues that arise with the respect to candidates' P&T cycle. And this heading here, can't stress it enough, deadlines. Dates are carefully prescribed in the collective agreement. And you'll note that there's a lot of dates in the collective agreement for various submissions. And any changes of those dates require mutual consent between MUN and MUNFA. And we exercise and execute that agreement through a memorandum of understanding, or MOU. And they're quite frequent during the P&T cycle. And so one of the key things we'll talk about in a moment is if indeed there are changes required or we need to amend some of those dates. We certainly haven't encountered any difficulties between ourselves and MUNFA to amend those dates. Just we need to know in advance so we can actually do it. But other than that, things run smoothly. But those dates, even though there may be an understanding between the head and the candidate, yes, look, well, instead of submitting your file on this date, submit on that date. While we appreciate that understanding occurs, we do need to capture those actual changes through a memorandum of understanding, and that's something that we can't stress enough. If deadline falls on a weekend, the date moves to the next business day. So with respect to deadlines for any committee members, if indeed you know that a deadline is going to be problematic or not something you're going to be able to meet, notify your head as soon as possible. Likewise, for heads, listen, if something comes to your attention that the committee is not going to be able to follow through, or there's another issue with respect to the timing, reach out to us as quick as you can so that we can get an MOU put in place. And those, as I say, we regularly put those MOUs in place. And where we typically see these kind of requests coming in is a candidate may request a bit of additional time to submit their file, and that could be through a variety of reasons. Could be unforeseen family events have arose, and individual just needs a bit of extra time. Oftentimes we see that committees are seeking additional time. Referee letters may not be in as anticipated or expected, which causes a bit of further delay. So based on that, then there's a request for timing. So it could be a number of reasons as why we need to look at extending those dates or putting them through. And as I say, it's generally not an issue at all. So just as soon as you can, they'll let us know, because it's oftentimes hard to do it if we find out well after the date is passed. Some advice to the committees. All members should be present during transaction of business. In no case shall business be conducted in absence of one or more member or the chair. transaction of business shall be confidential. When, you know, this bullet is making the assumption that really we have a full committee of five individuals. You know, I think we're well on way now that we understand the committees can meet virtually, as long as in real time, everybody has necessary documentation. Perhaps, you know, perhaps one of the most important points on this slide, or I would suggest the most important point on this slide, is the last bullet, clause 908. So clause 908 obligates that candidates must be given the opportunity to address committee's concern before a committee makes a final decision. So if the initial decision of a committee is negative, the committee is obligated to advise the candidate of its concerns and provide an opportunity for the candidate to meet and address those concerns. If indeed this particular provision is not adhered to, it does create significant substantive issues and problems as we move through the remainder of the P&T cycle. So I can't stress enough, this one is important, that we have to adhere to what the committees do. And it's, you know, it's certainly for a very bona fide purpose. You'll note that the collective agreement, when you have an opportunity to read through clause 908, note the collective agreement makes reference to within 10 days of being notified by the committee, candidate shall meet, if indeed the candidate, you know, exercises that right to meet with the committee. While the provision of the collective agreement makes reference to within 10 days of notification, we fully recognize that the meeting may not actually occur within the 10 days. Obviously, the collective agreement, we want the meeting to occur as soon as possible because the process has to continue. But we do recognize as well that there could be issues of scheduling, there could be issues of a candidate trying to put together their points to address the concerns of the committee, which may take a bit more than 10 days. So I just want to make that point that it's, you know, even though the meeting, we do recognize that the meeting may not occur ultimately within the 10 days. But 908 certainly something to be cognizant of and our obligation. Another issue that will undoubtedly arise when committees are reviewing files is with respect to joint appointment and cross appointments. So with respect to joint appointments, the stated primary unit has responsibility for the assessment. The head and the P&T committee of the other unit must be consulted and the assessment file made available. So that means the head and the P&T committee of the other unit are provided with the full access to the full file. In contrast with cross appointments, the administrative head and the appropriate faculty members of the other unit must be consulted. So it does not involve an examination of the file and is limited to written comments concerning contributions the candidate has made to the cross appointed unit. Those couple of distinctions here in terms of the joint appointment is based on access to the full file, the P&T committee and the head. Cross appointment, it's the head and the appropriate faculty members. We sometimes ask who are the appropriate faculty members, and the appropriate faculty members, I would suggest, are those individuals within the cross-appointed unit who the candidate has their working relationships with. That would be a sort of a context under which we're considering here appropriate faculty members. So those are a couple of different scenarios that may arise when reviewing files. With respect to the timing of the collective agreement and moving forward, a couple of things we're suggesting here in terms of the order of reviewing the files for committees. Non-decision year reviews first, tenure decisions, then promotion decisions. That will help you stay on track in terms of and stay consistent with the terms of the collective agreement and various time deadlines that are outlined. Teaching evaluations. Yeah, so teaching evaluation not required for P&T assessment files. If a candidate does include teaching evaluations, you will note that the 3-year requirement is no longer in the collective agreement. So when you look at clause 801, it's not there. Under the previous collective agreement, if a candidate included teaching evaluations, it was mandatory that they would include the 3 most recent years of teaching evaluations. So that particular sentence is struck, so it's no longer a requirement. We say here recent arbitration. I think it's probably a bit more dated now, but highlighted, an arbitration award, previous one, highlighted the flaws in the assessing teaching effectiveness through those course evaluations. In any event, the teaching evaluation should not be a determining factor in assessing teaching effectiveness. Just a couple other points on teaching evaluations. If an ASM does not submit their teaching evaluations, committee cannot draw a negative conclusion. Something is not appropriate. But if a file does not, however, if a file does not contain any evidence of teaching effectiveness, then indeed that is grounds for a negative recommendation. So something to bear in mind. Some resources that are available, a statement on teaching philosophy is not required. However, collective agreement, Appendix B, there's the updated dossier. And I think that one is, that's a good resource as well for people to consider and look at when preparing their file, and that resource is included there and has been updated for that purpose. Well, criteria used for decisions. Well, the language in the collective agreement, we reviewed the not in detail, but have a look at it. It's fairly lengthy in the collective agreement, both the tenure and the promotion criteria. However, the collective agreement allows as well that faculty schools can adopt more detailed criteria. Some of the parameters around that, though, that criteria cannot contradict the collective agreement. Must be formally approved by majority vote and ultimately approved by the vice president academic. So there are some groups, I can think of engineering, music, have adopted more detailed criteria. And key here as well, the recommendation from the committee must be based solely on the documentation in the file, and hence back to the previous point that we made, that indeed it's so important for the candidate to be responsible for their file. It is the candidate's file. And I think on that particular issue, we do have some points included in the slide here for some guidance in terms of an individual preparing their file. So the assessment file, oftentimes there's questions of where does the advice come from? How do I get some assistance in preparing my file? Well, one of the key points in the obligation of the collective agreement, the file must be created in consultation with the administrative head. So the administrative head here has a role to play, an obligation, we would argue, with respect to providing some guidance to the candidate in terms of what the file would look like. As well, talk to some of your colleagues in terms of get their advice on how a file should be structured. So there are some resources available there as well. And the other point here, applicants can have access to their file at any time. Head must notify candidate of their right to include in the file any rebuttal or written comments regarding any documents inserted in the file. Key point here is that any material going on, you can't put something in a candidate's file without making the candidate aware of the documents being placed in the file. The candidate has the right to know whatever documentation is being placed in the file, and as outlined in the collective agreement, they have the right as well to include any rebuttal or written comments regarding documents that are placed in the file. And last but not least, before sending the file to external referees, the head is obligated to remove documents pertaining non-decision year reviews and prior recommendations. Otherwise, the file is made available to referees, and that obviously is from perspective of not wanting to influence referees from prior reviews or prior commentary. Amy, you have a point or some comments?
In the chat from Dr. Carwy. What could be some examples of teaching effectiveness?
And Amy, did you or Josh or Erica maybe, Eric or Josh may be able to assist us in that one in terms, I know the COUT dossier is a good resource, but off top, maybe Eric or Josh or Ash can provide us some thoughts on that.
Step in and say that there are a lot of great examples on the CITL page as well. I'll find that link again and I'll post it in the chat. So there's someone that you can go to and actually they can help you design new ways to assess teaching effectiveness. But it can be everything from a classroom visit by a colleague who then writes a summary. It can be questionnaires that you developed yourself. It can be tracking student grades. There's many different ways. It's not prescribed, so it's really up to you how you think you can best highlight your teaching and how it develops.
I don't think I can do better than that. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you, Erica. The assessment file. Committee chair must communicate a list of the final contents of the file to the candidates, as per clause 808, prior to the review commencing. The other point here, note with respect to file, is candidate may reply to a negative recommendation as long as the final decision has not been made by the president and the reply does not or cannot include any new substantive material. So, for example, if a candidate wanted to make a reply to a negative recommendation of the committee, they would then submit that reply to either to their head or the dean. If the candidate was making a reply to a negative decision of the dean, they would make that then up the line to the provost. So always to the next level, provided final decision hasn't been made. But that is a right certainly of a candidate to do that. Advice to some heads. Administrative heads convene the first meeting of the committee, and then basically they only attend future meetings when invited to do so. There is an option as well for the head if something occurred that the head could request a meeting with committee, but other than that, as outlined here, the committee would not be meeting with the head would not be meeting with the committee. When external referees are contacted by deans, it should be receiving relevant sections of the collective agreement regarding the P&T criteria and supplemental criteria. There are model letters, those template letters, if you will, that deans have, which get sent to referees, which provide some consistency in terms of the messaging and the information that's being sought and asked for from the referees. And as noted, the administrative head can request a meeting with committee. If you have any concerns or questions with respect to where you are as candidate with respect to your P&T cycle, certainly reach out to Faculty Relations. Happy to engage in that discussion and make sure you get the information you need. We also include a section there on accommodation disabilities. So the P&T calendar, I think, has some advice in there with respect to accommodations. And as noted, accommodations are based on individual circumstances. They are designed to protect from discrimination, and normally specific accommodation measures will form part of the assessment file. So if there are accommodation issues, and oftentimes accommodation issues can be complex, so certainly reach out for any discussion as working through those, certainly to MUNFA Faculty Relations. And we're certainly happy to assist anyone in working through those issues. And I think that essentially was the points we wanted to cover off, and certainly subject any questions or commentary folks would have. Happy to address those. As I say, so folks should have a copy of the P&T calendars. Those are, pretty concise documents with a lot of dates. So we've tried to, in those calendars, document and clearly outline, which month, what you should be doing, and some things that are coming up in the following months. So that should be a helpful resource. Certainly, we hope so for folks.
Jeff, we have a question from Trevor about clause 1012. Go ahead, Trevor.
Hey, Jeff and Amy. Just would like a little bit of clarification on 1012. I know that the ASM will bring forward a list of potential referees to the dean, or unit head. In my case, it's the dean. Just trying to understand what the consultation should be. Is it just to say these are appropriate? Should this consultation be before the list is submitted? We'd just like a little bit of clarification on the consultation element of 1012, please.
Certainly I can, Trevor, I can provide certainly an initial response on it in terms of the challenge may be when and if the list is presented, being able to have a discussion about what consultation, because the list may at that point in time be rather new to you as the dean. I think it's meant here to try and encourage a dialogue if there are particular, provide an opportunity for the candidate to share perhaps some rationale as to why they think these individuals are fit. If there's any potential issues that could arise, good opportunity to pursue it, or for example, if as receiving the list there was a name or something stood out about a particular proposed referee, provide an opportunity for you to have that dialogue with the candidate at that time. Certainly it's meant to, I think it's meant to encourage here that there be a consultation and dialogue, so we ultimately get to the point, and that may take several discussions, but we'd ultimately get to the point whereby when the list is finalized, that's a list then that's going to go through, and that's the list is going to be used to select the names, and at least there's an understanding what that list is. And that's from my understanding of that particular clause, Amy, and I don't know if you care to comment in terms of your understanding and the advice you've given previous candidates.
It's the same as yours, Jeff. Yeah, it's kind of after the list has been submitted, and it's just before the list is kind of finalized to have that dialogue, as you know, Jeff. Trevor, is that good?
Yeah, that gives me a sense. Thank you.
Our next question is from Dr. Lucas Atkinson. Can you please clarify what you mean by the chair letting the candidate know what's in the file? That's clause 808. So my understanding with that one is, before the committee starts its deliberation of the file, the chair will transmit to the candidate a final, I guess, almost like a table of contents of what's in the file, so that the candidate knows what's in front of the committee before it starts to do its assessment. So I mean, it would just be an itemized listing. That's my understanding.
So this would just be like, listing what is posted on the Brightspace shell, like what files. Okay.
Yeah. And this is really important because it lets the candidate know of things that might have been inserted by the head. There's that provision there that the head has to insert some items from the personal file. And this is a good check and balance to make sure that there's nothing in the file that that's going to surprise the candidate or that otherwise shouldn't be in there as well. Yeah.
I'll just add briefly, because I found the wording a bit surprising, because the head has always put that information into the file and distributed that to the committee. But the collective agreement actually says that the chair should do this. So in my case, I've never actually done that. The head has always done it for me. But I guess if you were supposed to do it, ask your head for that information, because the head would have it.
Yeah, and that's, as I said, it's the collective agreement says it's supposed to be the chair of the P&T committee. And again, that's because it's taken the candidate's file, it's taken anything that may have been inserted by the head, and then it transmits that information to the candidate. So the candidate will know exactly what's in that file before the committee opens it up to say, okay, let's deliberate on this file. And then if there's any issues there, they can be flagged beforehand. The next question is for Dr. Abadi. What happens if the committee can't reach a consensus on a specific file? Jeff, I don't know if you want to take that one. You want to?
Yeah, if my understanding is if a committee certainly can't reach a consensus on it, there could be, the collective agreement does not preclude there being a majority and a minority report from a committee on a particular file. So I don't think the committee is, certainly we don't see it very often, but indeed I don't think the collective agreement precludes that.
It's not common, but it's, I wouldn't say it's, it can't be done or it hasn't been done, certainly in the past. Yep. There's a question from Darren that came Darren, that question came directly to me, but I'm assuming that's because I sent out the chat. I just want to make sure before I read out the question, if you're okay if I read it to everybody. Maybe I'll just hold off on that one. I'll come back to it.
Sure.
Another question, would a conflict of interest occur if a P&T committee member provided a sum of money to a candidate for equipment?
I'm not,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think on that one, Amy, I think I think there probably have to be more of a perhaps I don't know if that one's a yes or no answer. I think it may depend, I hate to say it, but it depends. I think there perhaps have to be more of a discussion and detailed information in terms of what that, when was, for example, when was the money supplied? Was it, that year? Was it 5 years ago? Was it a minimal amount of money? Was it a significant, what was the purpose of it? My initial thought would be, I think there'd have to be a number more questions asked and answers just to ensure the person did not find themselves in a conflict of interest. Just my opening thought. That's all. You may have some different thoughts.
Yeah. I think that's a hard one to say yes or no on.
I
Erica?
feel it is like sharing a grant, because I imagine that's the context. It's probably not a briefcase full of cash. So if you are allowing a colleague to purchase an instrument from a grant, or if you're purchasing an instrument for a grant that another colleague will use, I think I would treat it as you would treat other sharing of grants monies and decide from there. But yeah, like Jeff said, I mean, it could mean a lot of different things.
Some other questions there. Will the presentation be available as a recording? Yes, my understanding is that the actual recording will be available. Yep, so the full presentation. And I just want to go back to that question that I just asked about that came to me directly before I forget it. Can a candidate withdraw an application for promotion after the committee has begun review of the file? My understanding is yes. A candidate can withdraw their application for promotion. Jeff, I don't know if you've ever heard otherwise, but to me, I see nothing in the collective agreement that would preclude an application being withdrawn.
No, I don't think so either, Amy.
Okay. Okay, another question. If a unit has multiple promotion and tenure committees based on having branches at locations across the province, as in the case of the libraries, should all members of the committee and subcommittees be present at the inaugural meeting to elect chair?
I'm not sure I got an answer to that one right now. I can certainly, though, we can give that some thought, Amy. Not sure though.
I wonder if the question is about having remote attendance, and that's always allowed. So the committee can be meeting in person, but they can also meet with some or all members online, as long as Jeff has the exact wording on this. As long as everybody has access to the same materials. I'll let you correct me if I'm not quite right on that.
Yeah, I just want to, so the question is asking multiple P&T committees, but I don't think there's multiple P&T committees in the library. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's multiple P&T committee members. I'll let Diane clarify. I just noticed her hand went up.
Hi, yeah, am I unmuted?
Yeah,
this relates to the fact that we do have a single P&T committee, but for files where we have to review ASMs from Grenfell, under the collective agreement, we're required to have representation from Grenfell. So we have to use the 3 elected librarians for the main P&T committee. But then we have to have 2 appointed ASMs from Grenfell to form that subcommittee to review any Grenfell ASMs. So that doesn't happen very often, but we're in that situation right now. It's the reason why there are some questions around procedure for that particular scenario. So we know that we do need a subcommittee of the P&T committee. It's just the procedures around that it's a little bit confusing. So again, a chair could be selected from elected or appointed members, but in the Grenfell situation, would we need a second chair? Or could the chair for the main P&T committee also serve as the chair for the subcommittee? There are a number of nuances here. And again, it doesn't happen that often because Grenfell Library is quite small, and you know, they usually stick around for quite a long time before they retire or move on to other positions.
So if I'm reading, oh, you go ahead, Erica.
Oh, sorry, would a possible solution be then to have have a Grenfell member chair? Like when we talk about the main committee is for the whole library, and that includes Grenfell, right?
No, because the rest of the committee, the ASMs would be ASMs from Grenfell, so they would not be reviewing the files for the rest of the library.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so I'm,
interesting.
yeah.
Is that encoded in the collective agreement that
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grenfell?
Yeah,
Okay,
it is.
all right.
Yeah.
I'll have to review that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, Diane, you're right. I think that this happens so infrequently that I think we're all kind of trying to read our collective agreement during a presentation, which is probably not ideal.
Yeah.
But just looking at that, my understanding is, I don't know if I would consider these to be subcommittees. So this is a committee, right? So this committee, so the Grenfell committee would assess the Grenfell files and report directly to you, right? So that committee would elect its own chair. That's my understanding, just on reading this quick collective agreement language, or this language as we're on this presentation. So I wouldn't think of them as subcommittees. I think of them as actual committees for those files. I don't know, Jeff, if you understand anything different.
Yeah, I think the infrequency of it, I think I'd probably like to have a bit of a closer look at the collective agreement just to see if we're not missing something, to make sure that, you know, from a procedural perspective here, things are in order. We get it done appropriately. I tend to see one committee. I tend to share that view, Amy, that there's one committee, as opposed to multiple, you know, as opposed to different parts. But yeah, I'd like the opportunity maybe just to have a quick look through the agreement. So maybe what we can do is afterwards, Diane, reach out and copy each other on a response to it. Amy, I can, you know, send you some thoughts and we can send something, Diane, perhaps.
13.08 is where it starts. So.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like these are separate committees to review those files. They report directly to the Dean of Libraries. Just, you know, that there's not two subcommittees reporting into the main P&T committee. These are all committees reviewing the relevant files that they have to review. Right. And to answer the question, do they all have to be? My understanding is they'd all elect their own chair. So yes, they would all have to be present. But I think, yeah, I think Jeff's right. I think we just kind of need to look into that one a little bit closer, just to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, because it is a little bit of an unusual situation, and it doesn't happen frequently at all. So it's might be just a little thing there that needs to be flagged for clarification.
Yeah, I think I agree with Michelle's comment that the library committee and the Grenfell Library Committee have different chairs. They're separate committees doing different work, and they each have their own chair. That's my understanding, but I'll let Jeff, go into that further.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
There's another question in the chat. Would a candidate be discounted if they were, I think that should be charged with the crime or drinking in driving or theft? Well, Jeff, I'll let you open that one.
Well, yeah, thanks, Amy. Discounted, I mean, I presume what the question is getting at here, if someone was charged with a crime or something, indeed, would that mean that their file would not be, I'm presuming, not be considered? That's what I'm taking the discounted to mean. Not sure that certainly in my time that situation fortunately has not arose. I'm not sure. I guess one of the challenges there is that individuals may be charged with different things, and pending a final determination by the court of law doesn't necessarily mean the person has actually engaged in that behavior. Once again, I think we'd have to collectively, both parties have a close look at a particular circumstance, I guess. I don't necessarily see, though, a criminal charge resulting in an individual's file being, if you will, not considered or held in abeyance, whatever terminology you want to use. I wouldn't necessarily see that being the outcome of a criminal charge against the individual, but one of those things I think we'd have to have a closer look. But To me, I think the process under the collective agreement would continue unless it was something that, you know, really brought itself within the realm that, you know, I don't know, the charge in this particular case. I think the example is a driving while impaired kind of charge. I wouldn't necessarily see that in any way impacting on the person's P&T cycle, but you know, I don't think we've had that one, certainly not my time, occur.
I don't think mine either, but I just know clause 1830 of the collective agreement that says, as for circumstances allow, including the outcome of disciplinary action that the university might take, and this is with regards to criminal charges and conviction, an ASM who has been charged or convicted shall continue to pursue their normal university duty. So, you know, unless it's something I think that the university is going to take disciplinary action against, my understanding looking at that language in Article 18 is that it would be business as usual.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Any other questions, Amy, that we
I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I don't know if there's any. I'll just do another quick sweep to make sure there's no hands up. Let's give folks another second in case anybody wants to put anything in the chat. Otherwise, I'm not seeing anything.
Right. Well, I think you know, I'd like to say thanks everybody for attending. We've got a little bit of follow-up work to do. Interesting question on the Grenfell library P&T process. So that's an interesting one this morning with a bit of follow-up to do, and we'll get back to you very short order on that one, Diane. Other than that, I want to thank everybody for their participation this morning. Really appreciate, enjoyed the questions and the suggestions that came forward. Otherwise, as indicated, this will be placed on both our websites, the recording. If you have any questions on P&T, reach out to any of our offices. Happy to help you work through that process. Otherwise, folks, everybody have a good day and remainder of the week. And cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.